Howdy EHRD 491 students. The purpose of this video is to introduce you to your quantitative data collection assignment. So what you'll see in front of you is Module 7 from our class, and I'm going to be showing you some documents that are in the documents for the quantitative data assignment. Before we punch into that, though, I do want to point out a couple of things below that. The first one is the how to use SPSS. One of the things that you'll be doing is collecting data and forming two groups of people, and so you will be expected to complete an independent t-test. And so if you need to remind yourself how to use SPSS, there's a Word document that reminds you how to do that. And then the next thing that you see is how to read the SPSS output for the t-test. So reading t-test output from SPSS. The bottom icon that you see is the link that you'll use to actually submit this assignment. So it will be a Word document. So let's go and look at the documents in this folder. You'll see the Employee Communication Satisfaction Survey, the Quantitative Data Collection Instructions, and then a PDF of some writing methodology. So let's look first at the instrument itself. The instrument is called the Employee Communication Satisfaction Survey, and I'll just scroll through it real quickly so you can get an idea of how long it is. When you print it out, it's just a couple of pages long. There's a couple of things I want to point out. The first one is that the top 4 questions are considered demographic information. So I've provided 4 of them for you. One of the things that you'll see when we look at the instructions, and let me just open up those instructions so we can look at them just for a second. Get to the top of them. One of the things that you'll be doing is giving this to 10 people who are employed. So you get to actually decide who your subjects are, and what you're going to do with those subjects is actually form 2 groups. And so you can form 2 groups on things like gender. You can form groups based on whether they're hourly or salary employees. You can form your groups based on their age, how long they have worked here, meaning at their place of employment. Or you can change any of these questions up. Notice, though, that 2 of them do require continuous information. So how long have you worked here? This might be years or months. What is your age? That's going to be in years. Versus categorical data. So you're either male or female. You're either hourly or salary. And again, I've had people do this exercise, and they have looked at things like management versus this was a wait staff, so they're a restaurant manager versus the wait staff. So there's a lot of different things that you can change to meet your needs. So we're going to come back to this in just a few minutes. We're going to look at the instructions now. I'll come back here in a few moments and talk to you about how to actually score that. So again, you're going to be collecting information from 10 employed individuals. So that's basically the only criterion, and you get to select them. Then you also need to collect data so that you can have approximately 5 people in each of your groups. So this little paragraph talks about those demographic questions. So I have an example here of, is there a difference in communication satisfaction based on ethnicity? If you want to do ethnicity, then you need to change one of those top 4 questions to ethnicity. Again, you need to have about 5 people in each group, so make sure that when you give this out, you don't end up, if you were going to do gender, like 1 male and 9 females. So you got to base it, you got to contact individuals that can answer this for you, that will help you form the groups that you want to. In this particular example, I'm writing, or I'm suggesting that my question is there a difference in level of satisfaction, communication satisfaction, and political affiliation? And again, obviously this is not one of the questions that's on there, and it probably doesn't even make sense that it would be even related to communication, which is why I chose it as a variable. So if you choose something else to form your groups on, make sure that you change those questions at the top. Again, give it into 5, so that 5 people are in each group. So in this case, with the example I am giving, I would find 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans. So you're going to do that first, and then you're going to score the communication scale. So let's talk about that just for a second. So again, some of these questions are categorical, so males versus females, hourly versus salary, and then some of these are continuous, so years that you've worked here, your age. For the demographic items, I would like for you to keep 2 of the questions as continuous, so like the years, and then keep 2 that are categorical. What you'll do for the continuous variable is you will calculate the mean and standard deviation for each of those. And in a minute, when we go back to the instructions, I'll talk about how do you, or where does that information go. And I would also like for you to keep 2 of the items as categorical. So again, I will talk about what you will do with that. The first set of 5 questions is just some attitudinal types of things. So are you satisfied with the communication in your company? What best describes your impression? How do you feel about the information you receive? How well do you know the company? And how compared to a year ago, knowledge of the company's strategies and ongoing accomplishments. As it turns out, we, for this exercise, are not going to do a whole lot with this information. I left these questions on here. I did not make up this survey, but I left these questions on here because later on in the term you're actually going to be creating your own survey, and one of the things that you have to do on the survey is make attitudinal types of questions. And so I left this on here to give you an idea of some of the types of attitudinal questions that you might have. So again, just to reiterate, for the purposes of this quantitative data collection assignment, you're going to do something with these top 4 questions, 2 continuous and then 2 categorical, and then you're also going to do something with this last set, which is listed as question number 7. Again, these are attitudinal types of questions. This is considered to be a 5-point Likert scale, and it goes from 1, which is strongly disagree, all the way up to 5, which is strongly agree. Having said that, though, these 7 questions can be scored, and so here's how you're going to score each individual person's scores on their survey. So if the first person I gave it to said that they strongly agreed with that first statement, they get that's related to 5 points. If on the second question they said that they are undecided about that statement, I add the 5 plus the 3, so through the second question they have a score of 8. Let's say on the third question they also are undecided, so that's worth 3 points. So 8 plus 3 is 11. So what you will do to score this instrument is for each of the questions, you'll go out, see what they said, and it could be something like 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. And again, I'm not doing the math on that, but just score their responses on their questionnaire. You will do that for each of the 10 people that you do. So each of your 10 people will have an overall score with regard to their satisfaction with communication, and those 7 questions are related to their satisfaction. Okay. So once you have collected that data, you're going to write a 3-section paper, 1 section for participants, 1 section for the instrument, and then 1 section for the results. And here are the guidelines that you're going to use. Go ahead and put a title in the center of the top of your paper, and so the title for me might be something like the satisfaction level of Democrats versus Republicans, the satisfaction of communication of Democrats versus Republicans, or something like that. So give some indication of what you measured, the dependent variable, communication satisfaction, and then the levels of your independent variable. So put a title at the top. Then you're going to double space, and the next thing that you'll do is have your participants section. Notice that basically from that title all the way through the body of the paper, if you will, and the body of the paper for us will be these 3 sections. You just double space, double space, double space. There's no extra double spaces within. Okay, nothing's underlined, nothing's bold, nothing's italicized, and just so you know, this is all per APA. So you'll have a title at the top, a double space, and then the next heading that you will have is participants. So participants is left justified, so it's left on the left-hand side, and in that little paragraph, which again is double spaced, you will be presenting 3 to 5 sentences that describe your subjects. And so how did you select the subjects? Probably for the most part, these were volunteers. You could call them volunteers. You can call them a convenience sample. My experience has been is that people typically don't truly use a random sample, even though that's the best type of sample. If you tell me that you use a random sample, that means that you're telling me you put names in a hat and started pulling names out, and those were your subjects. And so again, my experience has been that very few people actually randomly select subjects for this particular assignment. So describe how you selected your subjects, what were the common what was the criteria for their selection, and the one criteria I've given you is that they must be currently employed and or any common characteristics. And what I mean by that is that they all worked at Reynolds and Reynolds. So if all of your people came from the same place, you can actually name that as a common characteristic. So that will be in your participant section, and then the last part of your participant section will be the summary information for those top 4 questions. So if you leave it how I gave it, that means you'll give the average age and standard deviation for the group, the average years that they have worked for their present company, average and standard deviation for that, and then also the frequency of males versus females, and the frequency, again, if you leave it how I gave it, of hourly versus salaried individuals. So all of that will go into your participants section. The next section will be the instrument section. So after you finish your participant section, a regular double space, instrument is left justified, and then you'll do a regular double space, indent. Okay, all of these paragraphs are indented, and then you'll start talking about your instrument. So the things that, I'm going to skip down here, the things that need to be in the instrument section are the name of the instrument and the reference, and I'll be providing you the information for the reference, although I will not be putting it in APA format for you. So I'll give you the information that you need for the reference. So the name of it, what does the survey measure? In this case, our survey measures attitude toward, and let's jump back up here, satisfaction of communication within this present organization. Okay, so it measures satisfaction with communication. So that's what does it measure. How many questions did it have? And so for our purposes, you can go ahead and use the whole instrument for the number of questions that it has. And then how do the subjects respond? In this case, they responded to a 5-point Likert scale. And again, you go back and look at the scale. 1 was equal to, if I recall correctly, strongly disagree, and 5 was strongly agree. A few sentences, or maybe even one sentence, with how it was scored. Okay, so I talked you through that section on the box. That's the only section you really need to talk about how it's scored. So a couple of sentences on how that is scored. What is the range of scores? And so I'm going to make you kind of think about that. But what this means is if a person put strongly disagree on every one of those and you added up their score, that would be the lowest possible score that they could have. If someone put 5s on all of that, what would, and you added up all those 5s, what would the highest score be? So stop and think about what is your range of scores. So if everybody put 1s and you add that up, that's the range of the lowest scores. If everyone put 5s and you added that up, that would be the highest score. And then how is it interpreted? So I'm going to kind of make you think about this. But if someone put 5s on all of these, which means they strongly agree with the statement, again, you need to think about this. Do you think that means that they are very favorable or have a good attitude toward communication in their company, or do you think it means that they have a poor satisfaction level? And again, what you're going to have to do is go back and read these statements and figure out, if I strongly agree with them, what is my attitude toward communication within my company. So all of those will be the elements in your instrument section. Again, instrument left justify, skip a line, indent, and then provide all of these items. And you pretty much need to just put them in this order. That typically reads for a better instrument section. Lastly, you will put information in there about the results. And so right after your instrument section, you'll have a results section. And then in the results section, the first sentence should present the overall mean, standard deviation, and range of all the survey scores. So again, this is the scores for the questions within the box. So the demographic findings you gave in the participants section. For the actual satisfaction score, that's those 7 questions within the box. So again, once you get all 10 of those, you'll average them, calculate the standard deviation and the range for all of them. That will be your first sentence. The next sentences will be what is going on with the t-test. And as it turns out, I have actually written pretty much that sentence for you. You will have to fill in the blanks based on your findings. So your first sentence, or maybe even 2 sentences, will have all this overall information, and then the next sentence will start. An independent t-test was used to determine if significant differences exist between, and again I'm using the Democrats versus Republicans, so you'll fill in males versus females, old versus young, hourly versus salary, whatever you looked at, with regard to satisfaction with communication, period. The next sentence will deal with, did you or did you not find a significant difference? So if you did, you will say a significant difference was found between the groups. If you didn't, then you will say no significant difference was found between the groups. Now I have provided you with how to read SPSS output, and so I'm going to, what you'll see when you open that document is some SPSS output, and I've written where you need to look and how you need to read that. So I'm not going to actually do a voiceover on that. You're going to need to be able to look at that and then relate it back to this T parentheses 8 equals 4.5 comma P equals 0.03. Again, all you have to do is put your time in, look at that, and you'll be able to figure out where all of these numbers came from. In this case, I will tell you that there was a significant difference because P was less than 0.05. So for this data, this sentence would read, a significant difference was found between the groups. T, or comma T 8 equals 4.5 comma P equals 0.03. The last part of this deals with presenting the means and standard deviations for your groups. Typically, you present the group with the highest score first. So, for example, I may have found that Democrats were found to have a more positive attitude toward, and I changed this up, so a more positive attitude toward communications when compared to Republicans. And then the next sentence, Democrats had an average, in this case, attitude score of, and again, you'll look at whatever their attitude score was and their standard deviation, while Republicans had an average attitude score of whatever their attitude score was with the standard deviation. Now notice that T, P, and SD are in italics, and that is per APA. And also the standard deviation does remain in parentheses. So pretty much, except for the SD, which will always be in parentheses, and any parentheses you see, like with the 8, everything else that's on here that is in parentheses, you will fill in the blanks based on your data. Okay, so that will be labels, it will be numbers, decisions, all of that will be changed depending on your data. And then lastly, in your results section, you will present a histogram that gives the average score for each group. So you'll have a bar for your, in this case, Democrats, and a bar for your Republicans. Now, I will say that a couple of things about this. Most students have to go into Excel to do this, and then they can't. It's hard. It's really hard to do in SPSS, and it's beyond the scope of what I'm willing to even really talk to you about. But then, this cannot be done by hand, so do not hand draw this. After the three sections here, participants, instrument, and results, you'll go to the next line, the next page, and at the top, references will be centered. Okay, so start on the new page and your references at the top of that. And really the only thing that you are referencing here is your instrument. And I will be providing either in an email or some other method, I will provide you the information that you need for referencing this instrument. Again, think about how you do reference items in APA based on the type of elements I give you with regard to the instrument itself.